You bring up Aiden Hutchinson. Of course, he's got a trip to New York this weekend, rightfully so. I think most people believe that he will not win the Heisman Trophy. Bryce Young is such an overwhelming favorite, but just the honor, especially as a defensive player, we've had the conversation as he has started to gain this momentum and this support for this award, that for a defensive player to gain this kind of recognition is rare.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was the first defensive player to win the Big Ten Conference Championship game MVP as well. And so it is definitely a cool honor. I agree with you. I don't think he's going to win it, but just the trip to New York is an honor in itself, as you said. And so is he deserving of it? That's the big question that everyone's talking about. There are a couple people, one down the road in East Lansing, that are a little peeved off about it, with Kenneth Walker not getting the invite. To me, they shouldn't be mad at Aiden Hutchinson. They should be mad at Pickett from Pitt, who kind of came out of nowhere and jumped a couple people to get the invite as well. But obviously, we talked about it here before we got on. The thing about the Heisman is you can't just look at people's stats in two stat lines right next to each other. You can't look at what somebody did, back in September or October. What happens with the Heisman is you have to have that moment down the stretch. You have to play well down the stretch in big games that make your team eligible to win the next one and go to a championship and do all that. Aiden Hutchinson did every single one of those. He played well in just about every game for Michigan down the stretch, including in their biggest one against Ohio State with 3 sacks, where he was overwhelmingly dominant in front of 15 million people watching on TV. Now, so go ahead.
Go to it, Justin.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say, yeah, you can go to the critics down the street in East Lansing for Kenneth Walker. And after the Michigan game, he was my guy. I said, he's my Heisman Trophy guy right now. He got banged up a little bit, didn't play well against Ohio State, didn't play much against Ohio State with 6 carries. Michigan State falls out of the race. So to me, it's typically about winning. It's about statistics. And then it's also, as you said, it's about those moments that stick with people, whether that's just a ridiculous catch that wins a game, or a quarterback leading a touchdown drive, or a player on defense making plays that we don't typically see. And with Aiden Hutchinson, it was that repeated pressure in just football people being able to recognize, if you're any kind of a football person, being able to recognize that this guy is impacting the game, affecting the game, and breaking up a offense by his just presence in the backfield. And so that's what it was. When you look at the stat line, to your point, we talked about this before we started to record. Will Anderson in Alabama, he has a ridiculous number of tackles for loss. It's like 31. I think he's had 15 or 16 sacks. The stats are a little bit better. I would ask anyone to go through game by game, look at Alabama's games. We've seen this with players all over the place, and that's why you look at the splits, why you look at the game log. Who is he amassing these statistics against? And again, it still goes back. You got to think, with Alabama making just about every playoff 7 out of 8, nothing to be taken away from Will Anderson on an outstanding season. But did they desperately need him? Aiden Hutchinson, from the time they kicked off and even before that, has led a charge in terms of being a leader for a program that desperately needed one to spearhead them to where they are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at Will Anderson, and down the stretch here in the last 3 games, he had 1 sack in each of those games, which by all means is fantastic. If you average a sack a game, you're incredible. That's there's no doubt about that, right? But it's a little bit like we talked about down the stretch. You can almost peak too early in the Heisman race. That's what Kenneth Walker did. Will Anderson against Mississippi State on October 16th had 4 sacks. And then against Louisiana State on November 6th. And so inferior opponents that are not happening down the stretch, that's kind of just what it is. And the other thing too, again, the Heisman, unfortunately, is a TV show. It's for ratings. It's for a lot of that. Having Michigan in this college football playoff for the first time, like you said, Alabama's been here. People are sick of hearing about Alabama. So for Michigan to be there for the first time, and then for them to be able to have a chance at sending a guy to New York, it all is the formula for a lot of people to love it and watch it. And so you have to think about that. I wish it wasn't like that, but that's just the case of it. But I still think there are those like X factors of Aiden Hutchinson being that senior leader coming back for his senior year. He's going to be projected the number 1 pick in the draft. He's got the passion. Him and Jim Harbaugh, with pictures and videos of leading this team. There are so many different X factors that Aiden Hutchinson brings to the game. And like you said, there are times when Aiden Hutchinson doesn't get the sack, but he blew up the entire play. And if you actually did go watch the film, and I'm sure there are times that Will Anderson did the same. I'm 100% sure of that. But if you watch what Aiden Hutchinson did, as you say, he literally affects every single play that he lines up against.
There are outstanding players all over the country, so it has to be limited to 4 or 5. You could go any year, and does the cutoff of great players in college football, does it stop at 4 or 5? No, but there are only so many invites, and that's the way it works.